So this video is going to be nothing more than just talking about data entry or putting things into AutoCAD. I usually will show you how to do this using the line command, but I'm deciding to do something a little differently. I'm going to use some commands that you may or may not know, but if you watch any of my previous or videos after this, you will see me use some of those commands and use some of these methods mixed into it. Now here are the standard methods or different ways of adding things or utilizing or putting data into AutoCAD. So we're going to start with the dynamic. And in the dynamic, anytime you hear that term in AutoCAD, that just means that it's going to give you total control of how you want to do it. And one command that really demonstrates that is going to be the lengthen command. So in the lengthen command, remember the shortcut for lengthen is if you type in LEN, and that will activate the pre-starting of AutoCAD to just kind of spell it out for you. So if I type in LEN, you'll see that the command lengthen is there. Or it should be listed underneath modify, and it's going to be the third icon on that top row. So let's look at the lengthen command. And now it's asking me to specify an object or something that I want to measure or I want to lengthen. So before I can use this command, I have to use a line command or something that I want to modify. So I'm just going to draw a quick line command or a quick line. So I'm going to select this icon and just draw. And let's put it at an angle just so I can show it to you and I don't have anything else kind of stretching over it. Now let's go back to the lengthen command. And then we're going to use the dynamic option. So I'm going to choose dynamic. And it's asking me to specify an object that I want to change. Remember with the lengthen command, I'm going to pick on the edge or the closest point to the side that I want to change. So I'll select here. And now you can see that I have total control of how I want to lengthen or shorten this line. So it's just another way of clicking. Another way that you see it, and this is utilizing the line command, is that if I'm just going to click lines, this is also known as being dynamic. So I can click on different endpoints or other Osnaps. That's just utilizing AutoCAD dynamically. Okay, the next method is going to be the absolute one. And with this one is kind of particular, is that you have to know exactly what points that you're going to. So you can imagine that you're doing graphing that you may have learned, and you got a 0, 0 or an origin, and you're going to have to pick points depending on how far you are or close to that origin. So we're going to use the circle command, and I can also illustrate this one with the line command. Okay, so switching back to AutoCAD, the first thing I'm going to do, let's go ahead and get rid of these lines. And I'm just going to put a window around it, and then I'll erase it. Okay, so with the absolute, we have to know where each and every point is, and that's where this icon comes in at. This is called the UCS. It tells me where 0, 0 is. The point to where this little square is my origin. In order to tell AutoCAD that I want to use that, or I want to use the absolute method, I have to do something first, and that's turn off the dynamic input. The dynamic input is going to be controlled by the function key 12, and you can see that if I click that, nothing really happens on your screen, but when I type something in, and I'm just going to start typing, you will see that it will come on my command line here at the bottom. Another way to verify that I'm using the absolute method or I have my dynamic input turned off is if I come and I look at this icon here. This is the dynamic input, and it's telling me that it is off. If yours does not have that, you can come over to the 3 bars where it's customized, and then you can go and find dynamic input and make sure that there's a check next to it. If you do that, then you will have this icon, and I can simply turn this on and off. This is the exact same thing as toggling with the function 12 button. Okay, so now that we have this off, I have AutoCAD set up to work strictly in an absolute method. Let's go ahead and place a circle at point 3, 3. So if I go to circle, and I'm not going to get into if I'm going to use a radius or dynamic diameter here. I'm just going to type in where I want it at. So it's asking me to specify the center. I can type in 3, 3. You can see once again it's on my command line. Once I hit the enter button, it's going to go to 3, 3, and it's going to ask me for the radius. Let's just make the radius 1. So now I have placed that circle and its center is located at 3, 3. If we want to do this with the line command, let's start with the line. And let's start at 0, 0. And now you can see that my line is starting at the origin. And let's go directly to the right of it. So if I type in, once again, I'm going 3 on the x-axis, 0 on the y-axis. So it's going to be 3, 0. And once I hit enter, you're going to see that that line will stop there. Next, if I want to go exactly to the center of that, remember that the location of that is 3, 3. Enter. And you'll see that that line will go to the center of it. So this is the absolute method. It just means that I absolutely know where each and every coordinate or point is that I'm creating this with. Now, I'll be honest with you, I don't use this command much, and I've used it, very sparingly throughout my career. But this is the option, and the key thing to remember here is that anytime you're using the absolute method is that you have to have the dynamic input turned off. So let's go ahead and escape, and let's go ahead and erase this one. And then let's take a look at the next method. Now the rectangular method is a much more convenient way of using it. If you can kind of understand the absolute method, well, the rectangular method kind of leeches off of that, so to say. I can use basically from my last point is going to be my 0, 0, if you're thinking of it in terms of absolute. And I will explain this a little bit as I go through the demonstration of how to do this. Okay, so picking back up where I left off at is that I deleted everything off of my screen and I'm still set up to use absolute. I'll go ahead and turn my dynamic input on. Remember that I can select this button here, or I can hit the function key 12 on my keyboard and that will turn it on, or I can actually click this icon. All of them will do the exact same thing. Okay, so just by me selecting that just tells AutoCAD to go back and do one step. And I'll tell you why I have to turn this off, or better yet, I will show you why this has to be off if I want to use the absolute method. Okay, so let's go ahead and draw a line just like we did before. And I'm going to start at 0, 0. One other thing that you also should notice is that once this dynamic input is on, you can see that next to my cursor, I'm getting the commands, the specify first points and things of that nature. Okay, so that's another way of verifying that your dynamic input is turned on. Okay, so I'm starting a line from 0, 0, and that's my first point. Now what it's telling AutoCAD to do is that I'm and I want to go 3 units to the right. So before I had to type in 3, 0. This is the exact same step on this one, except for, since I'm coming from the origin, this is at 0, 0, and I want to go 3 units to the right and 0 units up. So if I type in 3, 0, and hit the enter button, it's going to go to the exact same point as my absolute. And the only reason that it's doing that is because I'm starting this at the origin. So next, if I want to go up 3 units, and I don't want to go left or right anyway, I just want to go up 3 units. I'm going to type in 0, so the first number is my coordinates on the x-axis, comma, how many units I want to go up, and that's going to be 3. So now you're seeing that I'm creating this going that direction. Okay, so if I wanted to place a circle, and now what AutoCAD remembers is that my last point is going to be my reference point. So this is the last point that I used. If I use the circle command and I want to specify a center, if I automatically type in or hit the enter button, it's going to jump to, well in this case it didn't, but it will normally jump to the last point that I have. So it's asking me to specify a center. Let's go ahead and pick this center or just any location. And now I can give it the same radius that I did before. I'm just going to type in 1, enter. And let's go ahead and create another circle. And now I want to locate that circle at a certain distance from that one. So say, for example, if I want to locate this one, 5 units to the right and 5 units up. So that's 5, 5. I'm going to type in the @ symbol, and this @ symbol is what is done automatically for you if you're using the dynamic input. So this is why you can't have this on when you're using the absolute. So I'm going to type in the @ symbol, 5, 5, and hit enter. And then I'll hit the enter button one more time just to accept that as the diameter. So now you can see that this is 5 units to the right and 5 units up. If you remember when I went back and I created these lines commands, I did not actually put that @ symbol, but I'm going to take a look at what I was doing in the past. And you can see that when I created that line and I was at 0, 0, and then when I typed in 3, 0, it automatically puts that @ symbol in front of it for you. It's always a good practice if you do type the @ symbol. That way you'll always know that you're using the rectangular. Sometimes you don't have to do it, but it's always in a good practice to do it. There's a couple of commands or things that you're going to use that you're going to you really have to type it in. And as we get going through the course or some of the other videos that I have, you will see that I will physically type that @ symbol in. Okay, and the command that I'm thinking of that I have to type that in is going to be one of my Osnap commands. So for example, if I want to draw another circle from the center of this one, going 5 units this way and 5 down, I'll go to circle. And then I want to activate my from icon or my from Osnap. And this is going to be covered when you look at the Osnap video. But if you shift and right click and you use the from, now it's asking me to specify what center location I want to use or what point I want to use. I'm just going to use this center. And now I have to physically type in the @ symbol, 5, -5. And now it's placed my circle where I want it. I'll give it the same diameter of 1. And now you see it. Okay, so that's going to probably conclude everything that we're going to have to do with the rectangular method. But you will see me use this in other commands. For example, if I wanted to move something, we can always use the move command. Select the object that you want to move. And then I can pick a point. And then let's say I want to move that 5 and 5. So I could type in 5, 5. And you're going to see that moves it 5 units to the right and 5 units up. Once I hit the enter button. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at the next method. Okay, so this one is going to be dealing with angles. It would be nice in our world if everything was sitting at right angles, but the polar method is just one way of setting up angles. So you have to use the angle or know which angle that you're going to use. Now there is the angles always start from facing directly to your right or pointing to your right. That is 0. Going straight up in AutoCAD is going to be 90 degrees. To the left is 180, and going straight down is 270. So all the angles in between that, which are 45s and things of that nature, will really help you when using the polar method. Also remember that when you're using this method, you can also use negative angles. So you can go backwards and you can use negative distances, and I'll show you what that means. But it's kind of a little confusing, if you would, way of utilizing a command. And it's kind of crazy if you would type in a negative distance and a negative angle. Okay, so back in AutoCAD, let's make a copy of one of these circles. So I'm going to say copy. And I want to make a copy of this circle. And once again, since I'm moving at a distance, the base point here is irrelevant. So I don't have to necessarily pick a center or anything of that nature. So I can pick a point located out here. And now I want that to go at an angle, right? So you can type in the @ symbol, or you can decide not to when you're utilizing this because you have your dynamic input turned on. Okay, so I want this thing to go, let's say 3 units going at an angle of 45. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is type in 3. So that sets my distance. I have to use the angle, and I'll type in 45. And now you can see that it will create that circle here, 3 at 45. Now, I was telling you before that we can also use negative numbers and also a negative angles. So, for example, I'm still at this same copy point. Let's say I want to go -3, which is kind of saying, okay, I'm aiming this direction, but I want to go backwards this direction. Now, I'll demonstrate. So, if I'm going to type in -3 angle 45, you should be expecting to get a circle on the back side of it this way, because I'm pointing this direction but go a negative distance, and it did produce that. Okay, so if I wanted to go, let's kind of confuse ourselves even a little bit more. If I want to go a -3 at a -45, where would that put me at? Well, that should put me primarily right on top of this circle. So if I type in -3 and -45, I take that back. -45 is going to put me down here, but it should put me located in this area. So -3 angle -45, and it did. So you can kind of confuse yourself. It's a lot easier just to type in the 3 and figure out what that angle is, which is 135, to get to that location. But you can use those negative values if you understand them. And like I said before, it's probably confusing. It's a lot easier just to type in 3 and use positive and negative angles, or use the negative distance and positive angles. But I would very rarely use negative values with a negative angle. Okay, and let's go ahead and take a look at our probably one of the best and easiest methods, and the most commonly used method that you're going to use in AutoCAD. Okay, so let's take a look at our next one, which is going to be the Ortho mode, and it has the F8 at the bottom of it. Remember that that's going to be our shortcut, and I'm going to show you ways to make sure or verify that you have your Ortho set on. And probably the most easiest way that you're going to see is if you just move your cursor. And if you have your lines and things of that nature going straight, either horizontal or vertical, that's another way of knowing that you're in Ortho mode. But like I say, this is probably one of the ones you're going to use a lot. Anytime you're using straight lines, or you just want to copy something at a certain distance or move something at a distance, it's a lot easier to deal with it in Ortho mode. Okay, so Ortho mode, we want to first make sure that we are set up in Ortho mode. One of our first ways of doing that is just by simply selecting the F8 button, and you're going to see right above your command line, it tells me that the Ortho mode is on. So that's the first way that I would look at it. If I want to physically look at a button, it's going to be the one that has the right angle, and that'll tell me that I'm in Ortho mode. And the last way is, like I said, if I'm in like the line command or something of that nature, if I'm dragging my cursor around, and you can see these lines will only go up and down and left and right, that's another way to verify that you're in Ortho mode. Okay, so let's go ahead and use a command that's in Ortho mode. And once again, let's use the copy command. So I'm going to go to copy. I'll select the object that I want, enter. I'll select the base point, which is here. And now I just aim it whatever direction I want. Okay, so if I want to go this direction, I aim it and I tell it how far I want it to go. I want it to go 5. I can just type in 5, enter, and it's ready to go again. If I type in 10, I can keep adding on as I keep going. 15, and you can see that each one of those are spaced out. Okay, let's take a look at the Ortho command when using the line command. And this is one that most people will make the mistake on, or in the beginning until they catch on to it. So if I draw a line, and I start from this point, and I want to go this way. Now, in order to make sure that that activates going up, and I say, okay, next I want to go up 5, I have to make sure that I get the preview of that line going at a right angle. I've seen some people where they'll have it still pointing this way, and then they'll type 5, so that line is just going to grow by 5, but they're not getting the angle to come up. So you have to use the preview. Okay. So once you are getting those previews, it's okay to type in the number that I want to go up. So if I want to go 5 that way, I can go 5. Make sure that you're getting the preview of that line going the direction that you want. Say 3. And now I want it to go up. I have to make sure that I'm getting that line showing that it's going up or down or whatever direction I want it to go. And then I can type in the distance or things of that nature that I want it to go. Okay, so those first four that I showed you here are ones that you're going to use a lot. These next two, or the last two that I'm going to show you, are kind of new ones, but they are really, really useful and will save you a lot of time. Okay, so let's start with the first one. Okay, so polar tracking. Very, very useful, especially if you got something that has angles, and they are very common angles that you can use. And what I mean by common angles is 45, 30s, 60s, angles of that nature that are typical that you're going to see a lot. So you could set up AutoCAD to say, okay, anytime I see those angles, use those, or I can use that to create or copy or modify something along those angles. Really, really useful stuff. Okay, so when I want to set up AutoCAD to use polar tracking method, the function key is going to be function key 10. The icon for it is going to be right next to the ortho one. Now these two can exist together. So you can either be in ortho mode or you're going to be in polar tracking mode. And what I mean by that is that ortho only sticks to horizontal and vertical lines. This one can only create in angles. So that's why you're going to see that when I select one, the other will turn off. So then remember that these two cannot exist together. Okay, so I have it icon, I have the polar tracking turned on. This fly up next to it is where you're going to use to select what angles you want to use. So you see that it's broken all the way down to 5, 10, 15s, or all the way up as high as the 90s. And this very top ones, these are exactly how you would use it if you're using an ortho mode. Okay, so as you want to use more and more closer angles or specific angles, you can use one of these. I'm going to select the 45, 90, 135 one. Okay, I'll start with the line first. So if I wanted to make a line at an angle, I'll select my first point, and you'll notice that I get these green tracking lines. When I get the green tracking lines, as long as I'm on this line, I can type in whatever distance I want. So you can see that I'm tracking at a 45 degree. If I type in 10, it's going to create a line that's 10 long at 45 degrees. So you can remember earlier when I was creating the circles or copying these circles, which is what I'll do now, I had to remember what angle they wanted. Well, with this, I can use a copy, select the circle, pick any base point I want. Once again, I'm moving at a distance. But if I wanted to go 3 units going this way at 45 degrees, I can just simply type in 3. Once I get that polar tracking on that line, and I can turn this way and go 3. And you can see that I can slowly but surely build these circles around me at the specific distance I want and also at the correct angle, as long as you utilize the green tracking lines. Okay, and the last one, but it's really a super important one. If you don't know the exact distance to something, is going to be our Osnap tracking. Okay, so in the Osnap tracking, remember the shortcut for it, or to make sure that it's turned on, it's going to be our F11 key. And that's what we're going to utilize to make sure that we are in Osnap tracking. If we haven't covered OSNAPs, or if you don't know anything about OSNAPs, those are going to be your object snaps. And object snaps are anything that you could select on, like for example, an endpoint of a line, a quadrant or a center of a circle, midpoints of lines. You got many different OSNAPs that's in AutoCAD that will help you perfect and make sure that your drawing is perfectly. Not instead of, you don't want your lines close enough. You want it to actually click on an endpoint or perpendicular or something. So these Osnap tracking methods is going to help you and make sure that your drawing turns out accurate and keep it looking professional. Okay, so remember that the Osnap tracking is going to be our function key 11. So if I select that on my keyboard, like all commands, it usually will give me and tell me that it's turned on or off. So as you can see that is toggling on or off. I do have a physical icon that you can select on, which is located here. And remember that if this is not showing, always click the 3 bars for the customization. And then you should have your Osnap Tracking located here. Okay, so once I have Osnap Tracking turned on and I verify that it's on, say for example I want to start a line at this point, but I want to stop it right at this center. I have no idea how long that line is, but I can have AutoCAD stop it there for me. So I'm going to start a line, and I don't know what distance it is from here, so I'll click here. And as I'm going this direction, I want to go, okay, I think I want to stop right in line with that center. So what you need to do is just touch the center of this and then come out of it. And now you can see that as I come down, I'm getting that line to track off of it. You can see that I have a vertical dotted green line, and my horizontal line is my Osnap tracking. I'm sorry, it's my polar tracking. So once I do a left click here, when I get those two little intersections, that'll end that line here. And say I want to stop it right along this center, so I'm just going to touch this center. And I'm going to come outside of it, and then I'll track off of it. So once I get my intersection or my little X there, do a left click, come back this direction. I don't know how far that end point is or how long I drew that line, but if I touch the end point, and remember I'm not clicking on it, I'm just touching it. So do not left click on those icons down there, but once I get here in that intersection, do a left click, and then I can finally come at this end point. Now I'll escape out of the command. So you can see that it is super useful that if you don't know the exact distance of where something is, but you have an Osnap that's located on where you're trying to go, you can track off of that and get to where you're going. You can do the same thing with any of these other modifying commands. So for example, if I want to move this circle, and I don't want it to be at the exact center of this one, but I want it to be in line with it. So this time I do have to select a point that I want to be in line with it. So I'm going to select this center. I'm going to thumb and I'm going to touch that center of that one. And then I'll come down and you can see where it intersects. I'll do a left click. And now you can see that that circle is in line with the other ones. Okay. So I hope you enjoy all of these input methods in the AutoCAD, and you're going to use all of them or in some point in your career or in some of the examples that we do. And these will help you out a lot if you can kind of remember some of them, and they're really good to use to practice. Remember that if you're not getting good with remembering where they are, you got these little icons at the bottom that'll help you and make sure that you're known. And please feel free to refer back to this video as much as you can. If you kind of need more information on it, just drop a comment down in the comments, and I will try to make more videos explaining each one of these if I have to in a separate video. All right, so I want to thank you for watching.